Different type of loans offer different interest rate. Yeah, ada banyaklah loan from the bank. Personal loan. You have your, of course, kalau company will take the normal loan, the commercial loan. And of course, if you are issuing debt securities in the form of debenture and bond, also you are actually asking loan from the investor, from the public as well. So therefore, this will all carry different interest rate depending on the risk profile of you punya risk profile. So if you are big companies and very strong financial punya performance, normally the interest rate will be lower when you borrow. But if you are small companies, you don't have a good track record, then if you want to borrow from the bank, normally bank will charge high interest rate to reflect your higher risk profile, because here we say that big companies normally don't have problem paying back their punya loan in general lah. But of course, a smaller company will find it difficult if they have what I call volatile performance to pay off back the amount due to the bank. So that's why normally bank can charge higher rate untuk smaller company compared to the big companies. Now, risk occurs when there are changes in the market interest rate. Yes, kita memang perhatikan every day, all investors in the market, all participants of the market will actually observe the interest rate movement. Baru ni, for example, Bank Negara Malaysia naikkan interest rate because inflation, kita punya inflation dah naik, barang semua mahal kan. Jadi in order to reduce inflation, therefore the Bank Negara will announce an increase interest rate so that bila bank actually lend out money to all the companies, they will charge higher interest rate. So bila ni berlaku, what happen is the bank, of course, bank cannot actually get much customers because borrowers will find it difficult to borrow from the bank because borrower kena bayar high interest rate. Jadi bila high interest rate berlaku, there will be much less cash being cycled through the economy, right? So people cannot have more cash in their pocket because mahal. So therefore, instead people will start do savings. Maknanya people will not spend money but do saving because they get high interest rate revenue from saving. So in this way, bila tak ada banyak belanja dalam ekonomi itu, so the inflation rate will go down because the price of goods will not be in demand anymore because people are not spending. Because not spending, dapat borrowing from the bank susah, especially company. Company will actually curb their punya activities lah, because there are in terms of funding they're quite limited. So this is how you actually control the inflation today. So that's why Bank Negara Malaysia naikkan interest rate baru ni to reduce the inflation so that the price of goods and services will go down a bit. So borrowers are concerned, of course. Borrowers, kalau you are borrower, of course you concerned with increased interest rate. Memang, so you afraid that in the future you have to pay more in terms of interest obligations. Lenders just now, like I said, like bank for example, they are concerned with decreasing interest rate. The market interest goes down, so therefore they have less revenue in the future. Okay, so lenders and borrowers can lend or borrows at fixed or floating rate. Ni buang S dia, tak cantik. Okay, so therefore there are two type of what I call pattern of interest rate in the market that you can actually apply lah. So the first one, of course, yang kita very concerned is a floating interest rate. So this floating interest rate, kalau you borrow with a floating interest rate punya ni payment kind of ni, pattern. So therefore, you need to actually look at the market interest rate. So market interest rate, they can move ups and down. So that will affect the floating interest rate that you have to pay to the lender. So therefore, this is very, very what we call risky in a way because of course you ambil floating rate interest rate kalau you forecast the market interest rate will go down in the future. That's why you ambil floating interest rate to actually benefit. Kalau betul you punya tekaan in the future that market interest rate will go down, so therefore your interest cost in the future will be lower. So therefore that's why people sometimes when they borrow, they instead ambil fixed loan, akan ambil floating interest rate loan macam tu because why? Because they nak benefit from the market interest rate down. When the market interest rate goes down, dia akan benefit in the future. Tapi kena forecast betul-betul lah so that in the future tu betul-betul market interest rate akan jatuh. Kalau you salah teka, then you find that you have to pay more, then you suffer lah because you don't know how high the interest rate will be going up. If you actually apply fixed interest rate, then you are protected in a way lah. So whatever happen in the future, especially kalau you rasa in the future the market interest rate will go up, so you have protected yourself because you don't have to pay more than what you have actually agreed to pay on the fixed interest rate. So therefore you're protected. So you tak payah bayar. Tinggal macam mana pun ni. Tapi if the market interest rate jatuh, then you will not able to benefit from the lower interest rate in the future. Because why? Because you still have to pay fixed interest rate. So that the pro and con lah. So bila you ambil fixed interest rate punya loan atau borrowing, you are protected from high interest rate in the future. Market interest rate go up. Tapi kalau goes down, you will not benefit because you still have to abide by the obligation that you have set with the bank to pay fixed interest rate. So these are the pattern you can see in a year. For example, kalau buy fixed rate, sama je lah. Kalau 8% lah throughout. Sampai the end of the year, for example. Whereas floating rate of interest atau variable interest rate, it depends on the market interest rate prevailing on the day of the payment of the interest. So therefore, it can be going down like this, or it can be going up balik, atau it can be stagnant. Macam tu depend lah on the conditions of the market at that particular month. Now, these are the differences between fixed rate and floating rate. Of course, the benefit I said just now, interest rate remains fixed, irrespective of the market condition. Ini paling ni lah, paling what we call what the borrowers most likely will actually be interested in. Kalau the forecast, the future market interest will go up. So for those who want a fixed monthly repay, jadi kalau ada fixed rate pun ada peace of mind because you can plan now. You tak payah tunggu what is market condition will be like. You dah plan so every month macam ni je bayar. Whereas for the floating rate, you kena tunggu dulu. What is the market condition like, baru you tahu cost of interest rate berapa. Jadi that will be actually problem for actually planning purposes. It brings a sense of certainty and security. Yes, you have peace of mind. Tapi normally on average, when we talk about fixed rate ni, dia selalu lagi tinggi sikit lah in terms of the actual rate compared to the floating rate which is slightly lower in the long run lah. So these are the differences between these two rates. Now reference rate, normally for this is applied to floating interest rate lah atau variable interest. Jadi market interest rate yang kita cakap tu, dia benchmark measure dia apa? How do you measure the movement of the interest rate in the market interest rate kalau cakap pasal floating interest rate ni? So therefore kita pakai one measure called the reference rate. So when we talk the market interest rate, the market interest rate is represented by what measurement? So kalau you do a lot of international trading, normally we'll use the LIBOR. LIBOR ni London Interbank Offered Rate. So this is the most, I think, widely used international punya ni setting. When you do borrowing or lending, you base your borrowing and lending based on LIBOR. So this because London ni memang the center lah for capital market banyak and the Western developed countries. So London is the prime place where all the big banks are situated. So when we talk about this big bank, normally LIBOR ni represent the borrowing atau the lending of money with each other lah. The banks, when banks pun ada yang kurang duit, ada yang lebih duit. Jadi therefore the banks will actually do lending to each other based on a certain rate. That certain rate will be measured on the daily basis. Jadi at the end of the day kita tahu berapa LIBOR rate which is prevailing in the banks market. That will be the benchmark for the what you call market interest rate for that day. Jadi dia akan berubah every day lah. Tomorrow mungkin the lending rate between banks will be different. So therefore the LIBOR at the end of the day will be fixed at a different rate macam tu. Jadi this will continue. Jadi kita kalau you borrow on floating rate basis, you have to actually look at this LIBOR rate on a daily basis atau you kena forecast lah basically. Tapi yalah, you have to have the resources to do a good forecast. So normally kalau kita ni bukan bank lah, company bukan bank. Jadi therefore they have higher risk profile than the bank. Kalau the bank dia boleh charge at LIBOR sajalah between them because they are banks. But if you are non-bank, normally you will charge a spread margin lah, a spread or margin lah, over the benchmark rate atau reference rate tu. Jadi kalau kita company biasa nak buat borrowing to the bank, so company the bank will charge maybe LIBOR plus 2.5%. Meaning there is a spread, the profit that the bank will make because you are not a bank. So therefore you have to pay additional 2.5% premium on above the benchmark rate atau reference rate. So itu dia. Jadi ini biasalah, sebab tu kalau you pergi bank, kalau kat Malaysia kita panggil BLR, base lending rate BLR. Jadi that is the something like Malaysia kita ada KLIBOR lah instead of LIBOR. Kalau within Malaysia kita pakai KLIBOR lah. KLIBOR ni is Kuala Lumpur Interbank Offer Rate. These are the lending rate. Sama, dia punya konsep macam LIBOR. Tapi this is for domestic market. So therefore, these are the lending rates between banks in Malaysia. Right? So dia akan charge based on KLIBOR. So bila kita pergi the bank, of course dia akan charge based on KLIBOR plus spread. LIBOR plus margin lah because you are not bank, sama macam LIBOR tadi. So that's why when you go to any bank, bila nak buat macam housing loan ke atau apa loan ke, bank akan charge you, dia kata BLR plus spread berapa. Right? BLR basically the cost of fund for the bank normally is based on the KLIBOR. So BLR normally they follow KLIBOR lah in Malaysia. Jadi that is how you have to pay floating interest rate in Malaysia. Now this table is very good for you to understand the motivation for each of the party. There are dua party yang you need to focus on, the borrower and lender. But when you do all the questions in the exam later on, you are focusing more on the borrower because we assume you are a company that need funds and this fund need to be paid interest on. Jadi therefore you need to look at what kind of interest pattern that you want to actually apply. So kalau you are borrower, of course you concerned if the market interest rate in the future will rise. Right? Kalau you strongly feel that the market interest rate will go up in the future, so if you want to borrow money now, so it is favorable for you to use fixed rate base rather than floating rate because you'll be protected in the future kalau betul forecast je lah. So but if you forecast that in the future that the market interest rate will go down, the LIBOR will go down, example, then if you want to borrow now, then you are, it's favorable for you to use floating rate now. Kalau betul lah, lender will be the opposite. Kalau lender pula, kalau dia rasa in the future, the market interest rate will go up, so therefore it is favorable for them to actually issue loan based on floating rate because the revenue will be higher. Tapi kalau dia rasa the market interest rate will go down in the future, so it is favorable for them to use fixed rate. At least dia boleh ada cap lah, ada cap untuk dia punya what we call minimum revenue in the future should the market interest rate goes down. So this is important for you to understand. Okay, let's look at interest rate swaps. By definition, interest rate swap is simply a contractual agreement entered into between two counterparties. This ada dua parties lah. Bila buat swap ni ada dua parti. Jadi two parties ni, the thing about swap ni, you tak perlu pergi through any market. It's between you normally. It's very what we call, just like the forward market that we mentioned last time. So it's very customized between two parties. So between two counterparties, under which agrees to make periodic payments to the other for an agreed period of time. Jadi dia agree nak exchange either interest rate or currency over a period of time between these two, right? There are reason why lah, nanti kita akan discuss lah. Tapi swap itulah dia, satu parti bayar kepada another party an amount of interest, atau yang ni bayar amount of interest pada ni balik. Jadi dia akan buat simultaneously, right? So over a period of time, so one party will actually benefit, another party will lose out lah, normally. So when the swap actually happen. So we will study that in a while. Now the IRS, interest rate swap is a derivative in which one party exchanges a stream of interest payment for another party's stream of cash flow based upon some notional principal amount of money, maturity. Jadi interest ni, kalau kita nak kira interest ni, misal ada pokok dia atau principal dia. What is the principal amount of money that we are going to base to calculate the interest, right? So kalau dua agree, sebenarnya dia depend on dua parti tu. Notional maksud notional ni sini maknanya tak perlu ada pun amount tu. It's just based on agreement on what is the principle to be used in the swap. Can be any amount, but the amount doesn't need to be physically exist. Tak perlu, right? Jadi you nak base kira berapa? Based on 1 juta, based on 2 juta, based on 100 juta, based on 20,000, based on, jadi terpulang pada dua parti tu. Whether they are willing to actually use this notional principle as the basis of the calculation of calculation of interest in the swap, right? Jadi the word notional tu meaning you don't have to have actually the physical amount yang you kena hedge, right? Especially for speculators, dia tak perlu tahu berapa amount yang dia ada kena hedge, tak perlu, because dia akan pergi pada market terus speculate based on the interest rate movement. Tapi nak kira interest tu kena ada satu amount yang agreed, so that this amount will be the what we call notional principle, right? Tapi for hedges, normally dia akan gunakan amount yang dia kena hedge dalam spot market dia as the notional principle in the swap. There are two types of IRS. Jadi kalau interest rate swap ni sebenarnya dua jenis. Single currency interest rate swap, because kita normally pakai interest rate ni based on one currency lah for swapping purposes. Kalau different currency dah lain sikit. More advanced technique need to be applied. So the interest rate swap yang kita belajar dalam topik ni is technically called single currency interest rate swap. Okay. So kalau later on we look at currency swap, kita panggil this cross currency interest rate swap. Jadi ada technical differences between these two. Tapi kalau tak ingat tak apa, just ingat interest rate swap and currency swap. Now, if you look at the IRS market, so this is one of the biggest derivative market in the world. So if you look as, for example, statistic by April 2060, the daily turnover, maknanya the amount of transaction for IRS in the market is about 898 billion. In the United States alone. So kalau kita compare the size of market of all the shares in the Bursa Malaysia, the total volume is only 363 billion saja. So almost double, more than double the size of Bursa Malaysia. That is only for the swap market saja. So it's huge, very huge. But of course, this is not really accessible to laymen like us. It's more like big banks and all these big companies atau government in fact go into the IRS market. Now, it is a customized market. Maknanya, like I said, dia kena cari partner yang you boleh trust, betul. Right? So normally that's why all these big banks, but big bank ni semua ada reputation, big companies by reputation, government adalah very good reputation lah kan. Jadi dia tak risau because all these parties are able to pay the amount due under the obligation. So tak ada masalah. So if you have high reputation, then no problem. You can go to the IRS market. So this customized, so over the counter, dia tak ada exchange. You cannot find exchange for swap. Swap is done very privately between two parties. Normally kita assign bank as the middleman lah normally. Tapi tak perlu bank ada as a middleman. It's up to you. If you trust each other well, then you can conduct the IRS swap yourself. So each swap, dia dua parti tadi, bila A and B, bila A bayar pada B, kita panggil one leg. Bila B bayar pada A, kita panggil another leg. Jadi dua legs lah. So these two parties are called counterparties. Now what are swap for? Kenapa swap ni famous lah, popular? So of course swap ni dia ada certain what I call characteristic that help the two parties basically. Kalau you are borrower atau lender, they can reduce your exposure to changes in the interest rate on a particular transaction. Dia boleh tolong you overall position you lah. At the end of the day, after swap, you find that maybe your interest rate obligation is much lower after applying the swap. Okay, lower than that expected cost of borrowing with respect to bond. Bond pun sama juga. Kadang-kadang tu itu pasal issue bond at a very high coupon because the market interest rate masa tu dah naik. Tapi kalau you masuk dalam ni, you hedge that atau you want to actually contra the position with swap market. You masuk swap market juga. So you are able to actually gain from the swap market that will reduce the cost of bond tadi, coupon of bond tadi. Right? So they will have to reduce that. Manage the exposure to the changing market condition in advance of anticipated issuance of bond samalah. Jadi kalau you nak baru nak issue bond, tadi tu dia ada issue bond. Issue bond memang dah payah coupon lebih tinggi lah you rasa kan. Tapi nak reduce the coupon atau without actually having retired the bond, tapi you want to actually have an overall position where the interest payment that you have to pay will be lower. So you can go into the swap market. Part C, kalau baru nak issue bond, masa tu market interest dah naik. Jadi kalau nak issue bond masa tu coupon tu masih tinggi, nak tak nak. There is spot market lah. Spot market you kata tinggi. You have to go through this. Tapi of course, you can actually go into the swap market to reduce your overall what I call interest obligation. Kalau betul lah, you will gain in the what I call swap market to reduce the cost of issuing bond lah atau cost of coupon of the bond later on. Achieve more flexibility in meeting the overall financial objective that cannot be achieved in conventional market. Memanglah. Jadi kalau conventional market ni makna spot market, makna you tak boleh buat apa. You have to actually receive atau you have to accept whatever rate being what I call prevailing at that time. You tak boleh buat apa lah. Kalau yang terpaksa borrow at that rate. Tapi kalau terpaksa lend, you akan dapat banyak ni saja. So you are at the mercy of the market at all time. So therefore, in order to enhance your revenue atau not lower cost you can actually do hedging in the swap market that should actually help you to reduce your overall cost atau enhance your revenue in the future, depending who you are lah, either you are borrower or lender. Obtain customized cash flow to match the required payment obligation or revenue projection. Yes, sama lah. So you can actually use swap actually to lower the cost of your project, for example, atau nak enhance revenue project, depending on, because you want to actually hedge. Normally kita nak hedge lah, so that our position will be better in the future. Three forms of swap, but for us kita akan pilih nombor satu ni lah. because the one that is very popular in the swap market will be in this form, fixed to floating rate swap. Maknanya you have to actually first party mesti ada fixed rate payer dalam swap tu lah, and the second party kena jadi floating rate. Jadi dia bayar fixed pada the other party, the other party bayar floating pada you. Normally these are the what we call the more popular kind of application for this kita panggil as plain vanilla swap. Tapi ada juga floating to fixed, you can read this. This is the opposite of this. But basically lebih kurang sama lah. Floating to floating rate swap is more, I think, risky because you are using two what I call indexes, two benchmark rate normally. Satu pakai LIBOR, satu pakai CLIBOR ke, satu pakai Euribor, satu pakai LIBOR ke. Jadi dia more I think exposure lah in terms of risk dia. Jadi tapi the kalau betul-betul the return will be higher for floating to floating rate swap, but very high risk. Jadi kita fokus our understanding of the IRS based on fixed to floating rate swap saja. Okay, let's look at the IRS mechanics now. So kita akan fokus on vanilla swap atau kita panggil fixed for floating swap. Okay, where one party pays an amount based on a fixed interest rate and the party via floating interest rate. Jadi this is the what I call the two stream of cash flow that will happen in the swap. Now, of course, nak kira interest rate ni kena ada satu principal amount. This principal amount is called the notional principal. So this is based on the agreement between the two parties. So it can be any amount, not necessarily amount that you want to hedge. Kan, so the notional principal, because kita akan buat banyak kali swap dalam agreement tu, depending on how many years, akan ada a number of swap, and every time that we want to calculate the interest rate, it is based on the notional principal yang kita dah agree in the beginning of the contract. Jadi dia tak boleh tukar lah, tak boleh lah kata first year pakai notional principal based on 1 million, second year pakai based on 2 million, lepas tu balik pada 1 million atau lepas tu naik 3 million, tak boleh. Kalau 1 million agree based on 1 million saja lah sampai habis the swap. Right? So the notional principal is consistent. Okay, and of course swap ni lah, I said dia kena berlaku banyak kali lah. For example here, the fixed interval known as reset period may be 6 monthly, atau quarterly, atau whereas the tenor or maturity. Jadi tenor ni nak tunjukkan berapa lama yang nak agree nak buat swap tu, maybe 5 tahun atau 10 tahun. Katakan ambil 10 tahun, and every 1 year mesti ada 2 kali swap. Maknanya reset period for 1 year will be 2. Right? Kalau 10 tahun ada 20 reset lah, maknanya 20 kali berlaku swap, because you akan swap every 6 months for the next 10 years. Right? Jadi reset refer to the period where you do the swap, and then the tenor nak menunjukkan contract tu berapa lama. Contract for swap ni can be as can be a few days, boleh. Can be 1 week, can be 1 month, can be 3 months, can be any month up to 30 years. Jadi dia ni nak kata short term, long term tak juga. Dia depend, because it will really depend on the two parties. Dia tak ada kena mengena dengan the market, interest rate market, tak ada macam exchange, tak ada. So it is very what we call flexible between the two parties. So you can arrange. When you arrange a swap, you can determine what are the reset period and the tenor atau maturity bila. Now this is example dalam swap market. We are not talking about hedging yet. Kita cakap pasal swap market. Bila kita cakap swap market, ini akan berlaku. Fixed rate payer, for example, in this case, they agree nak bayar floating rate payer. Kata floating rate A, floating rate B, katakan. Jadi A agree dalam swap tu nak bayar pada B fixed rate of 10%. Whereas floating rate payer pula agree nak bayar pada B, pada A, 6 month base, 6 month yang period CLIBOR plus 1% margin. So the two parties agreed gunakan 100 juta as the notional principal to calculate the interest to be swapped in the every time they swap lah in the contract. So therefore nampak in this case dia kata apa? The figure outlines the case cash flow involves in fixed for floating IRS of 5 years. Katakan dia punya contract period, dia punya tenor is 5 years. And the notional principal is 100 million. So if the reset frequency is 6 months, maknanya dia agree nak swap every 6 months, 5 tahun, 1 tahun 2 kali. Jadi you will have 10 kali swaps akan berlaku over the 5-year period. Maknanya 10 resets akan berlaku within the 5 years. Okay, tu dia. Tapi depend tak semesti 6 bulan terpulang pada parti nak buat 3 bulan. Kalau 3 bulan over 5 year dah 5 kali 4 lah, 20 kali swap lah. Right? Tapi normally kita buat swap every 6 months atau per year basis lah normally. Kalau longer kind of contract lah. The fixed rate payer will pay an annualized 10% fixed rate while the floating rate payer will pay 6 months jadi LIBOR rate. Jadi dia akan jadi macam ni lah, every 6 months akan berlaku swap. Okay. So dia akan buat simultaneously. So therefore dia akan berlaku lah. Katakan sekarang nak tunjuk sekarang ni based on this diagram for the first 6 months katakan sampai ni dah masuk contract for the first 6 months what happened. So I will skip this because dia sama juga. Katakan bila sampai the first 6 months you tengok sekarang ni LIBOR berapa? LIBOR katakan is 10%. 6% katakan. Okay. So 6% maknanya kita sekarang ni kita sebab ini bayar fixed rate, kita tahulah 10% kan tapi floating rate ni kena tunggu dulu after 6 months, dia tengok market interest masa tu berapa based on the LIBOR berapa. So LIBOR katakan 6%. So what is the settlement of cash for the swap for the first 6 months? Kalau LIBOR after first 6 months is 6%. Right? Jadi kalau ikutkan you tengok sekarang the payment obligation for each party is as follow. Fixed rate payers because dia 10% kan 10% kali 100 million because this for first 6 months, 1 tahun kedua because rates yang fixed ni this is per annum basis normally so you kena divide by 2 lah divide by 2 so akan nampak kiraan macam tu dapat 5 juta. Maknanya the fixed rate payer kena bayar after 6 months 5 million tu floating rate payer. Whereas the floating rate payer pula dia kena bayar berapa? 6 plus 1 because LIBOR maksudnya 6% so 6% plus 1 jadi 7% 7% kali 100 million divided by 2 jugalah because 7% ni per annum basis jadi dia punya obligation is only 3,500,000 macam tu. Kalau ikut betul kan, dia ikutkan betul kan, fixed rate bayar 5 juta, ini bayar 3.5 million, tapi kita buat netting normally. Kita buat netting sajalah, because tak nak lah duit sama dia cycle balik kan. So sekarang tengok siapa yang kena bayar siapa based on netting netting dia berapa. Jadi kalau ni bayar 5 juta, ini bayar 3.5 million, jadi dia kena bayar the balance sajalah, right? Dia akan bayar based on 1.5 million saja. Ini patut bayar 5 million, ini patut bayar 3.5 million. So maknanya ni kena bayar lebih lah, fixed rate payer akan bayar lebih, jadi dia akan dapat the difference saja bila swap tu berlaku 1.5 million macam tu. Okay, dia tak perlu bayar, tak perlu buat bayaran macam ini bayar 5 juta, lepas ni bayar 3.5 million, barulah nampak net berapa kan ini tak, before buat bayaran nak buat nak close the bayaran, patut dah kira dah, oh aku hutang kau 1.5 juta, ambil ni. Jadi the first 6 months maknanya floating rate payer ni dia akan untung lah. Right? Because apa? Floating rate payer ni kata market akan jatuh kan. So betul jatuh. So dia untung 6%. Fixed rate payer dia rugilah. So dia tak dapat ni, dia kena bayar lah floating rate payer, jadi macam tu. Jadi bila ada swap ni akan berlaku macam ni lah, satu parti akan untung, satu parti akan rugi. Kalau 5 tahun maknanya 10 swap tu 10 kali swap maknanya ada every time swap berlaku, ada satu parti untung, ada satu parti rugi. Macam tu. Right? There are ups and downs depending on the movement of Clibo. Kalau Clibo katakan naik pada berapa? Let's say the Clibo naik 11.2% katakan macam tu. Pelik pula naik 11.2%. So you can nampak sekarang ni macam tadi juga fixed rate payer dia tak ada masalah, dia sama juga bayaran dia. But the floating rate payer akan dapat macam ni lah, 11.2 plus 1% kali 100 dari 6.1 million. Therefore, kalau ikutkan fixed rate bayar 5 juta, floating rate pay down terpaksa suffer because market interest rate dah naik gila, 11.2%, so dia akan bayar sepatutnya 6.1 million, tapi kita buat netting saja, ya, jadi 1.1 million saja akan dibayar oleh floating rate pay. Jadi kalau second 6 month ni berlaku, in this case fixed rate pay akan untung. Tadi dia rugi kan, first 6 month dia rugi, second 6 month dia untung, because the Clibo has gone up. Jadi the swap punya value is always determined by the Clibo punya movement ni. Nak tahu pasal tu, apa value of the swap? Value of swap is determined by the movement of the floating interest rate. Because kita tak tahu floating interest rate berapa exactly sampailah masanya bila kita nak buat swap tu. Then only we know whether which party will actually gain or lose out. This case. Right. So two important factors. The notional principle kita cakap ni will never exchange. You tak akan tukar. Yang exchange only the interest rate. Yang 100 juta kira tu tak ada kena-mengena pun kan. We just use for computation purposes saja. Tapi tak ada tukar 100 million. Ni pun tak ada 100 million, ni pun tak ada 100 million. Mungkin dia ada 10 juta duit lendangan je, 10 juta je. Tapi bila dia buat swap tu, konon-kononnya nak untungkan dia pakai based on 100 juta. Itulah speculation berlaku dalam swap tu because sekarang ni siapa beranilah nak pakai notional principle berapa, macam backing lah berapa, berapa 100 juta, 2 juta, tapi dia tak ada pun 2 juta tu, tapi nak guna that amount to calculate the interest. So you akan buat profit or loss based on the interest on the notional principle saja. Right? So therefore, this is very important for us not to speculate lah, because normally kita masuk swap ni kalau kita belajar, we want to do hedging, not for speculation. Speculation can put any notional principle yang kita bet. Market jatuh ke market naik based on the Clibo movement. Okay, so ni cakap tadi net difference paid, betul. Okay, so nampak yang menentukan changes will be the floating rate interest rate. So that will determine the direction and the quantum under the amount of payment that each party need to oblige now. These are the swap terminology. You kena faham ni sekarang lah. Apa maksudnya fixed rate payer, floating rate payer, okay, reset frequency, maknanya bila swap tu nak buat, berapa kali nak buat, reference rate, nak kira the floating rate tu punya ni based on what? Benchmark reference rate, yang prevailing at the time of the swap, and of course the national principle that I mentioned just now, so it's being used to calculate the interest rate, for swap purposes. Okay, any questions so far? Anybody nak tanya question ke? So far semua okay tak? Boleh follow?
Boleh, Doktor.
Boleh Okay, next one. Let's talk about the application of IRS. Now, of course, kita akan focus more on arbitraging. Cakap tadi, arbitraging will be the one that normally come up in your exam. But for hedging pun baguslah. Kenapa dia punya ni besar ni kecil? Okay, so hedging of course, kita akan buat hedging, samalah konsep hedging dengan apa tadi yang kita buat untuk forward, untuk apa ni, futures untuk opsi sama lah, konsep sama. Of course kita nak protect ourselves. Kalau you are borrower, macam cakap tadi lah, you want to protect from higher interest payment in the future. Kalau lender tadi, you takut the amount will be reduced if the market interest rate goes down. Jadi kita gunakan swap as a tool to actually help us to lower our cost atau enhance our revenue. So that is hedging. Arbitraging, of course, these are looking at the pricing atau the charge of interest that bank actually apply on two companies normally. Right? There are kind of differences. Kalau you are good rating company, normally interest rate akan lower. Tak kira lah floating rate ke fixed rate kan lower. Compared dengan yang company yang kurang sikit credit worthiness dia. Dia akan be charge high interest rate because dia risk tinggi. Jadi bila ada dua company identify macam ni, maknanya ada different pricing of interest kita katakan, and therefore there is an opportunity to arbitrage because the mispricing placed by one bank on two companies which is different for two companies because based on the risk profile of the companies. So therefore kalau dua company berjumpa lah katakan tiba-tiba, dia tanya kau berapa payment to charge, kau ni berapa jam bercharge, jadi dia boleh compare the rates and then they will actually consider arbitrage if there is an opportunity so they can profit themselves from the arbitrage to reduce the cost of borrowing normally. Right? Kita akan buat tu later on. Speculation macam tadilah yang cakap tadi, speculation ni dia tak perlu ada position the spot market. So yang ini kena ada position the spot market. Hedging arbitrage kena ada position spot market. Jadi yang ni hedging of course to borrow from spot market untuk funding purposes. Arbitraging pun kena ada borrowing in the spot market, then only go to the what we call the swap market. Speculating tak perlu ada spot market punya position. They just go into the swap market terus, then bet on the direction of the market. Siapa yang untung based on the determination of the LIBOR at the swap reset day. Itu yang menentukan siapa kena bayar. Macam tadi, sama tadi tu kalau kita base, kalau yang tadi ni kita based on apa ni, macam speculation ni, dia tak ada position dalam swap market pun kan. Nak tunjuk dalam swap market, bila ada masa dia akan untung 1.5 million, bila ada masa dia akan rugi macam ni 1.1 million. Kalau you are ni lah, kalau you are floating rate player. So depending apa position yang ambil dalam the swap market tu. Jadi tak perlu ada presence in the spot market. Okay, so let's look at this hedging rising interest rate. Katakan sekarang ni ya borrower, ni kita akan faham hedger purposes lah. Arbitraging kalau tak sempat mungkin itu sendiri kita buat. Kalau sempat kita buat kejap lagi lah. Hedging, you are borrower. For example, you are syarikat ABC, has a 5-year 10 million loan from my bank. You kena memang ada sekarang ni dalam spot market memang ada buat betul-betul dengan my bank 5 juta ringgit loan. Okay, sekarang ni loan yang my bank charge pada you because dulu you rasa market akan jatuh, you ambil floating rate base, LIBOR plus 2%. Payable bila annually katakan. Jadi sekarang ni betul you are a borrower dengan my bank, ada buat pinjaman 5 juta, 10 juta ringgit untuk 5 tahun, interest rate based on LIBOR plus 2% bayar annually. Jadi kita tunggu annual baru tahu berapa exact amount interest payment kita bayar because LIBOR is only determined at the end of the year. Okay, now syarikat ABC obviously has interest rate exposure. The firm's funding cost will increase if the annual. Jadi kalau dia takutlah because borrower kan dah based on floating rate. Kalau next year naik apa ni, by the end of the year naik interest rate, market interest naik, of course dia kena bayar lebih. Right? Kalau LIBOR, katakan LIBOR 6%, 8% jadinya. 6% 8% kena bayar based on the 10 million loan tadi. Kalau the next year naik lagi 8%, 8 plus 2%, 10% based on the principal 10 juta dipinjam tadi. Jadi dia you have an exposure to risk in this case. Given these circumstances, the logical way for syarikat ABC to manage the risk would be through. Kalau dikata oh in the future nampaknya silap buatlah sepatutnya borrow fixed rate dulu tapi ada terborrow, katakan ada terborrow ni based on floating rate, jadi tiba-tiba I buat tengok forecast market interest akan naik pula in the future, bukan jatuh. Therefore I'm exposed to rising market interest rate in the future. Jadi dia dah rasa ni lah, rasa sedih lah, kenapa they most probably have to pay higher interest rate in the future in the spot market. So another friend maybe bagi advice for dia, so therefore kalau you rasa macam tu, then you should go to the swap market. Okay, through what? Through IRS. Okay, so dia kata kalau you masuk swap market, very important, kalau in the spot market, you punya position in the spot market is floating rate macam ni, bila you nak masuk swap market, you akan minta jadi fixed rate payer. Very important, right? For hedgers. I repeat, kalau you are in the spot market, memang itu pasti you based on Libor tadi, floating rate, you memang floating rate payer, in the spot market. Bila you masuk dalam ni nak hedging in the swap market, you kena minta jadi fixed rate payer. Kalau jadi fixed rate payer, automatically akan jadi floating rate receiver lah, macam tu. Okay, so if the notional principal and received principal are structured to match the underlying position that is with my bank, then syarikat ni would have perfect hedging. Jadi kalau kita tengok diagram ni, for example, ini sekarang spot market, ini yang you punya loan dengan my bank 10 juta based on floating rate, Libor plus 2%. Jadi sekarang ni you rasa market interest akan naik in the future. Jadi you takutlah kalau naik 8% campur 2%, 10%. Kalau naik 10% campur 12%. Kalau naik 12% campur 14%. Jadi dia akan naik macam tu. Tak ada ceiling. Right? Jadi takut macam tu. Jadi what happened is I nak masuk swap market because I want to actually protect myself from rising interest market rate, masuk swap market. Jadi bila masuk swap market ni, ni position dia, ni syarikat ABC, kita ni syarikat ABC, in the swap market ini position kita. In the swap market, you akan minta jadi fixed rate payer. Of course, you akan cari counterparty lah. Counterparty ni kan be syarikat XYZ ke, atau can be a bank, can be a counterparty you. Normally bank akan willing jadi counterparty you, tak ada masalah. Jadi you akan cari satu counterparty yang agree nak buat swap dengan you, and then you can, the terms of the swap, for example, let's use notional principal 10 million. Kenapa pakai 10 million? Because you ada exposed, you ada loan 10 million dalam swap market you. Jadi it is common sense for you to use 10 million as your notional principal in your swap juga. Right? Unless you are speculator, ada rasa macam nak gambling sikit, even though you ada 10 juta punya position ni, masuk dalam swap, kata based on 100 million macam tadi, terpulang. Terpulang. Tapi boleh buat kalau nak, ada je party willing to 100 million based on macam ni, jadi terpulang. Tapi tak make sense lah, because hedging ni kena conservative sikit, kena risk averse sikit kan. Jadi it's more likely when you go to the swap punya market, you akan guna notional principal of 10 million ringgit macam ni. Right, so therefore now the term of the swap macam mana sekarang ni? Now katakan dah haggling antara dua ni, katakan I agree lah, syarikat ABC kata, oh I agree in the swap, I pay you fixed rate 8% per annum for 5 years, macam tadi sebab dia punya loan dia 5 tahun kan, for 5 years ni. And then on the other hand, the counterparty should pay me Libor, at least Libor per annum macam ni. Right? Jadi this is the term of the swap macam ni. Jadi you can see from this diagram, what's going to happen to the syarikat ABC nya overall interest punya ni obligation macam mana. So katakan lepas tahun what happen? After 1 year berlaku, swap berlaku kan. Bila swap berlaku, dia akan bayar fixed rate 8% pada ni, akan terima Libor from ni, from counterparty. Bila dia terima Libor from party ni, dia kena ada bayar Maybank juga kan, interest rate at the end of the year kan. Jadi digunakan pendapatan yang Libor PA ni per annum yang dapat pada counterparty ni, guna untuk bayar partially the Clibor part here pada Maybank. Yang ini akan cancelkan yang ini. Dia dapat from swap ini. In the spot market dia kena bayar ini kan jadi bila dia dapat Clibor ni, digunakan Clibor dapat tadi tu, cancel Clibor part ni, jadi seolah-olah dia bayar Maybank 2% saja. Tapi Maybank bukan dia bayar Maybank Clibor full lah tapi dia cakap overall position macam mana. Right? Jadi dia dapat Clibor, dia guna Clibor tu bayar ni, ini dah covered by the swap, the Clibor part yang dia terpaksa bayar Maybank ni, Clibor part dia dah covered by the receipt in the swap market. Jadi dia kena bayar 2% pada Maybank, dia kena bayar 8% the swap, jadi overall position dia seolah-olah dia akan bayar 10% saja. 8% in the swap market, 2% to the bank dia. Overall position dia. Jadi dia dah actually turn from a floating rate payer jadi fixed rate payer for the next 5 years. Kalau betul lah market naik every year for the next 5 years, dia tak kisah dah because this mechanism actually fix dia punya payment of its rate to 10% saja. Right? Dia tak kira apa-apa ya. Clibor tak ada mana dah pada dia because Clibornya portion tu dah covered by the Clibor receipt from the swap dia tadi. Can you understand this tak? Boleh faham tak? Ni explain je lah. Ni dia cara dia explain tadi. This is how hedging is done. You are turning yourself from an from a floating rate payer to an effectively fixed rate payer through the swap punya market here. Right? Ni dia. Jadi bila baca sini nampak effectively ABC has turned its floating rate table into. Jadi bukanlah physically tukar, mana kontrak dengan Maybank dia tukar pada fixed rate, taklah kan dia still buy Clibor juga in principle dia kan, tapi in terms of overall position dia, seolah-olah Clibor portion pada Maybank tu dah covered pada dia pendapatan through the swap tadi tu dia. Tapi dia kena bayarlah 58% pada as counterparty tadi itu dia. Jadi dia punya obligation now is effectively 10% fixed over the 5-year period kalau dia punya tenure of the swap also 5 years so memang hedging perfectly hedge lah sekarang ni kiranya Okay, boleh tak? Any question before I go on? Because it's important to understand this Anybody, any questions? Ya, siapa nak tanya question? Okay, semua? Okay. Alright, so sekarang ni kita nak just check sajalah so sekarang ni kalau kita tengok sini this particular diagram what will the net interest payment for the company if market interest increase as forecasted, naik katakan bila sampai masanya swap naik 12% katakan atau naik ke 14% katakan the Clibor. Kalau dia tak buat hedging tadi, kalau dia tak buat hedging through swap market tadi, kalau naik 12% for the first year katakan dah dari 14% kena bayar total kan Kalau naik 14% Clibor dah 16%. Jadi dia expose, memang kena teruk bayar. Right? Tapi kalau dia masuk swap market tadi, dia akan dapat protection macam mana? Let's look at this Ini yang kita tengok from diagram tadi. Tadi ni dia diagram what happen is dia bayar spot Clibor 2%. Ni dia bayar spot ni pada Maybank dia, Clibor 2%. Sebab tu dia bracket ni makna bayaran. Pay in swap dia bayar 8%. Counterparty. Okay. Bracket sebab bayar. Receive from swap dia dapat from swap Clibor. Clibor positif ni. Jadi you tengok net interest pay berapa? Clibor ini negatif Clibor kan ini positif, ini akan cancel yang ini, maknanya yang tinggal 2% bayaran plus 8% jadi net dia 10% bayaran. Jadi dia punya what we call overall interest dia kena bayar is, kalau ikut dari yang tadi, is 1 million ringgit. Betul? Katakan first year you tengok Clibor naik seperti dia buat tadi, naik 12% katakan. Bila Clibor naik 12%, dia terpaksa bayar pada bank dia 1,400,000 because 12 plus 2, Clibor plus 2%, 12 plus 2 14%, 1,400,000. In the swap dia kena bayar 8%, 10 million kali 8%, 800,000. Lepas tu dia receive from swap is 10 million kali Clibor, jadi 1,200,000. Jadi bila campurkan ni dengan ni, tolak yang ni, you punya obligation is still fixed at 1 million. Sama juga kalau second year naik juga Clibor to 14%, you akan dapat juga you punya bila kira balik, fix juga 1 million. Jadi effectively through the swap you have locked your interest obligation you at 10% throughout the swap period 5 years tu. Okay, jadi kalau betul-betul kalau you tak buat yang swap semua ni tak ada di sini lah. Kalau you tak buat swap you akan pay spot macam ni kan kalau pay spot first year teruk dah bayar 1.5 million. Tak ada hedging. 1.6 million second year. Kalau you buat swap, you akan lock you punya 1 million, jadi saving for first year 400,000, saving for second year 600,000 in terms of interest rate you. Right? This is the beauty of swap. Tapi kena betul fokus lah. Kalau fokus salah, then you will suffer losses lah. So tengok sekarang, katakan dia salah fokus. Rupanya jatuh, bukannya naik Clibor. Kalau Clibor jatuh 3%, bila kira balik, dia akan still dapat 1 million juga. Dah lock, because dia bayar 10% fix. Right? Dia akan lock juga. Bila kira ni, 5%, 5 plus 2, 7%, kali 8% bayar pada counterparty, 5% dapat from the counterparty, so you punya still 1 million juga. Tapi you will not benefit kalau betul-betul jatuh, you will not benefit from the market interest rate punya ni lah position bila market jatuh kan. Kalau you tak buat swap, kalau market jatuh, you kena bayar 500,000 saja for first year maybe, the second year bayar 700,000 saja. You will not enjoy this because the under obligation of swap, you punya position overall akan jadi fixed 1 million juga. So in a way, you ada additional cost one of katakanlah ini notional jugalah 500,000 and 300,000 seperti because tak boleh enjoy the benefit because you still have to pay at fixed now, right? Even though in the spot market you bayar based on Clibor. Okay, please understand this. Okay, next one. Katakan sekarang ni, ini another case lah. Ini case yang baru lah. Dia tak ada kemengena yang tadi katakan. Katakan ni syarikat ABC juga, macam tadi juga dia memang 5 years 10 juta, and then dia instead of dia pinjam from a bank at Clibor plus 2%, kita assume sekarang ni in the spot market dia pinjam from a bank tapi dia pinjam at fixed rate, katakan 8% per annum. Okay, fixed rate pinjam from a bank. Spot obligation lah 8% per annum. Okay, so sekarang ni dia fikir pula, ada buat fixed ni, tiba-tiba dia fikir, in the future based on the punya study, the market interest rate nak akan jatuh pula. Right? Kalau market akan jatuh, dia takkan dapat benefit from the market interest rate jatuh nanti. Because why? Because dia ada fixed punya obligation 8% sekarang ni. Jadi boleh tak dia gunakan swap tu nak tukarkan overall position dia from fixed payer jadi floating rate payer, and then kalau betul berlaku market jatuh in the future, dia akan dapat cheaper interest rate punya obligation. Right? So boleh tak dia buat tu? Boleh. Dia tak perlu pergi dari bank nak tukar punya loan. Nak tukar loan I pada ni, pada fix, pada floating rate tak boleh. Because dia dah buat obligation dengan bank tak boleh tukar for 5 years. Nak terpaksa follow through the spot panjang market obligation. Dia tak boleh tukar susuka hati dia. Tapi nak tukar demi position tu boleh dia buat if you can go through the interest rate swap market. Right? The interest rate swap akan tukar you seolah-olah from fixed rate payer menjadi floating rate payer. And kalau betul jatuh market interest rate in the future, so you will actually benefit from the fall in interest rate. Right, so what happen now is bila nak masuk swap market tu, since you are in the spot market, you are, ni penting in the swap market you are fixed rate payer. Jadi bila you masuk swap market tu, you akan minta I nak jadi floating rate payer. Kena opposite, floating rate payer. Jadi bila you jadi floating rate payer in the swap market, you akan bayar floating rate to the counterparty, and then you akan receive fixed rate from the counterparty. And then you will use that fixed rate to pay off the obligation of fixed rate in the spot market. Macam tadi. Okay, kalau nak tengok macam ni sekarang ni kes yang baru ni, tak ada kena-mengena yang tadi, tapi syarikat dah sama, term semua sama except now, bila in the spot market, bila dia buat pinjaman main bank, dia buat pinjaman based on fixed rate loan. Okay, 8%. 8%. Obligation dia, principal dia 10 million, which is being used in the swap as well as the notional principal. So in this case, memang kalau dia tak buat swap market kat sini, kalau market interest rate jatuh, dia tak boleh enjoy lah. Katakan in the future, kata first year jatuh 5%, second year jatuh 3%, dia tak boleh enjoy that. Because dia kena bayar pada Maybank 8%. Target. Itu bahaya je bila kita ambil fixed rate payer ni, fixed rate loan ni. Dia tak dapat enjoy. Tapi boleh tak enjoy kalau macam ni ke? Boleh. Kalau you masuk in the swap market. For example, now in the swap market, I cakap tadi kalau you are fixed rate payer sini in the swap market, in the swap market you akan jadi fixed rate payer. Okay, so katakan sekarang ni kita agree dengan counterparty tu, okay, I akan bayar you Clibor plus 2% per annum. Ini kena negotiate lah, kena bargain lah dengan parti lain tu ini terpulang pada sendiri punya ni initiative and then the other party should pay me fixed rate 8%. So this is a swap maybe for the next 5 years. 5 years, every annual kita buat swap reset dia. Okay, you akan nampak bila swap berlaku, fixed rate you terima 8% from the swap party ni, you akan gunakan untuk bayar the amount due for your spot market. Ini akan cancelkan yang ini, and of course overall position seolah-olah sekarang ni you are concerned only to pay Clibor plus 2% pada the counterparty saja. That is your exact obligation, right? So effectively you dah tukar obligation you from fixed rate kepada floating rate payer. Okay, nak test, let's look at this. Betul tak? Ni kita buat tadi, pay spot 8%. Ni kita spot ni bayar pada bank kita 8%. Pay in swap, kita agree nak bayarkan counterparty Clibor plus 2%. Receive from swap 8%. In net interest paid, jadi kita boleh nampak 8 ni cancel ini, jadi kita punya overall position will be Clibor plus 2%. Katakan sekarang ni betul-betul Clibor jatuh, maka kita jatuh. First year jatuh kepada 1%. Okay, you can kira, 8%, 800,000 you bayar pada bank. Okay, pay in swap, you bayar pada counterparty. Clibor plus 2%, 10 million kali 1 plus 2, 3%, 300,000. So receive from swap dapat 8%, jadi your punya overall net payment you will be 300,000. Nampak? You are saving a lot of money with the swap. Right? Seolah-olah you dah untung 500,000. Okay, 500,000 untung. Yang ini pun sama, kalau betul market rate jatuh 3%, so you punya bayar will be 10 million kali 3 plus 2, 5%, 500,000. So this is your obligation. Kalau tak buat dia punya swap, dia kena bayar 800,000. You swap, you punya overall position is 500,000, seolah-olah you save 300,000 already. Right? Macam tu. Tapi kalau you salah kira, right? Bukan salah kira, salah forecast, instead of jatuh, tengok-tengok market interest rate naik in the future, this is where you get burnt lah. You really have to suffer a lot lah here. For example, dia katakan tiba, salah teka lah, salah forecast lah, naik libur 12% after the end of the year. First year naik 12% katakan, jadi kena bayar sini nampak. Ini memang nak cancel macam biasa lah, tapi Clibor dah naik 12%. Jadi 12%, 14%, 1,400,000. Jadi you kena bayar additional, kalau tak buat swap, you bayar 800,000 je. Tapi because salah teka, in the swap market you suffer a loss, jadi you punya obligation dah jadi 1.4 million. Kalau second year naik lagi 14%, so therefore you nampak you punya obligation is much higher now. Therefore kena betul-betul lah forecast ni. You have to really have a good forecast about the future. But of course you never know lah. Nak tanya boleh ke macam ni? I don't know lah. Memang kena berani lah. You have to take the risk lah. That's why kita cakap all the derivative market ni is a very risky what I call venture, because there's no guarantee that you'll be hedged properly, atau you will untung in speculation, atau you get gain in arbitraging, semua tak ada guarantee. It is your gut feeling atau you punya investment instinct that will propel you whether you want to take this path or not. Kalau you rasa berani, you buat macam ni. Tapi untung dia besar lah, banyak lah saving macam tadi kan. Banyaklah saving dapat. Tapi kalau salah, inilah pula. Jadi dia sort of like a gambling kind of market jugalah. Because the value of the swap tu is determined by the prevailing Clibor at the time of the swap. Itu yang menentukan value. Alright, so ini important lah. Important for you to understand so that bila kita buat swap ni, kita kena hati-hati lah. Kena hati-hati. So just to summarize that what we have discussed just now, this diagram is cantik lah. Because kita cakap fixed to floating. Jadi kalau you tadi kan di ABC, you akan buy fixed, ini bukan sekali ABC, ini in general. In general, so katakan company A has borrowed with a fixed term, company A expect interest rate to decline and wants to floating rate borrowing. Interest rate swap initiated to accept floating rate. Ini kalau nak tunjuk position masing-masing macam mana, initial dia fix, nak tukar pada floating, jadi you ni lah, you akan buat all this, summary. This one is a bit advanced. For example, nak cakap pasal bond market lah. Katakan ini tak perlu tahu, tak apalah, just nak tunjuk ialah the versatility of the swap. As an example, a company may have obtained funding through the issue 3 years ago lah. Dia ada buat ni lah. Dia ada buat macam that issue, that funding through the issue of bond, katakan 3 years ago of a 10-year debenture, paying a fixed rate of interest of 10% per annum. Dulu dia ada buat. 3 years back, dia dah issue satu debenture, which have a 10-year maturity period, paying a coupon of 10% per annum, fixed rate. Okay. Now, it is asserted now be more suitable to its need to pay interest. Jadi dia rasa market interest rate akan jatuh in the future. Jadi kalau dia bayar fixed coupon on the bond macam ni, dia akan terikat lah. I mean 10%, maknanya dia punya cost obligation dia will be fixed at 10% forever sampai maturity. Okay, tapi dia nak enjoy katakan, dia dapat benefit. Kalau lah market interest jatuh, tapi I tak boleh buat apa, tak boleh buat apa-apa dengan bond I ni, terpaksa bayar juga 10% kupon Tapi boleh tak I gunakan swap tu nak reducekan overall cost I? Kalau dia forecast market interest rate akan jatuh in the future. Okay, sorry, inilah okay, betul lah. So dia kata, so to pay interest based on LIBOR. Cost capture banyak jadi. As shown the figures below, instead of redeeming the debenture, if indeed possible, and obtaining a floating rate finance, it could simply undertake a 7-year swap. Jadi dia akan ambil lah, kalau lagi 7 tahun tinggal kan, dia akan buat 7 tahun swap nak cover the remaining period of the bond so digunakan 7 tahun as the tenure of the swap so it will pay the swap counterparty floating rate jadi macam ni lah dia akan buat for example ini dia punya spot macam tadi dah juga the spot dia terpaksa bayar pada debenture holder dia 10% fixed coupon ni macam tadi ni kira bank lah tadi macam bank ni tapi instead of bank pakai debenture holder because dia ada debt securities right so 10% fixed dibayar tapi dia nak enjoy for example the lower interest rate kalau market rate betul seperti dia forecast will drop in the future. Let's say. So dia akan masuk swap market. Let's say kalau you dah masuk you dalam spot market you fix rate payer dalam swap tu you akan minta jadi floating rate payer. Jadi company ni jadi floating rate payer in the swap dia sanggup bayar LIBOR pada counterparty and the counterparty sanggup bayar 10%. Jadi cantik kalau boleh arrange macam tu. Ini lah Syed, macam mana dapat these two figures ni, this is up to you to bargain, to negotiate with the other party. Tapi you cuba dapat coverage untuk you punya spot position sini lah. Right? At the minimum cover. Kalau yang ambil katakan, dia sanggup bayar 11%, untunglah you. Dia tak tahu yang you ada position in in the fixed market 10%. Tapi you minta at least bayar 10%. Of course, takkan start negotiation bayar, kata minta dia bayar 10%. Mungkin dia minta bayar, you bayar 12% boleh tak? Nanti you bayar you LIBOR. Tapi dia kata, oh tak, I nak bayar you 11%, you bayar I LIBOR plus 1%. Tak apalah. Kalau you bayar 11%, maknanya you dah cover you punya spot punya ni 10%, you ada untung 1% lagi. And then kalau dia minta LIBOR plus 1%, that 1% can be used to cover yang fixed LIBOR tadi. Jadi seolah bayar LIBOR jugalah. Right? Macam tu. Jadi terpulang. Jadi tak boleh tanya I lah macam mana dapat LIBOR ni, macam dapat ni. Ini depend on the negotiation between these two parties. Yeah. Tapi you, hedging ni, your minimum you bisa cover will be the fixed 10% kat sini. Because you kena bayar coupon pada holder you 10%. Tak boleh. Kalau minta dapat 9, tak baloi masuk swap. Dia akan rugi. Right? Dia sanggup bayar 8%. Tak payahlah, forget it. Cari orang counterparty sanggup bayar at least 10%. Tapi kalau ada counterparty lebih bayar daripada 10%, lagi untung, lagi suka you. Right? So this is how you turn your position tadi from, fixed position, because you kena bayar fixed coupon, kepada position you where you can actually based on LIBOR. Kalau betul jatuh LIBOR in the future, you akan untung. In fact, very cheap sekarang punya cost of interest you. Because dia punya fixed obligation dah covered by the receipt, but now you pay to the party, your overall position katakan instead of 10%, sekarang dia jatuh 3% katakan, you buy 3% saja, which is a lot of money saving over the fixed obligation dulu, 7% you dapat saving macam tu. Right. Okay, so you please read this up, so understand this concept, so that you understand why swap is very, very powerful in terms of turning you punya what I call interest obligation from one position and from variable kepada fixed ke atau fixed pada variable based on you punya ni lah your future forecast of the interest rate. Jadi you are not actually what you call terikat lah dengan keadaan you in the spot market. Over the period, you can turn your position into a more, I think, beneficial position based on the swap market punya position that you take up with the counterparty. Okay, ni nak tunjuk the arbitraging. Ni ada masa lagi kan? Sekejap lagi habislah. Now, arbitraging pula. So tadi tu tak hedging. Arbitraging ni lain. Arbitraging tengok pada mispricing. I'll do one example dulu and I will complete the other example in the next class. Now, example one, arbitraging ni kena ada dua parti lah. Dua parti ni kena tahu masing-masing punya interest obligation yang di-charge oleh bank. Macam mana? Okay, so example ni, example senang tu dapat maksud dia macam mana. Example one here, company A and company B both want to borrow 150 million for 8 years. Dua-dua parti ni memang dalam market tengah mencari funding 150 juta and dia mesti sama, dia punya basis mesti sama. Kalau lain tak boleh buat arbitrage. Masing-masingnya ada 150 juta punya need and then dia sanggup borrow for 8 years. Tapi company A would like to borrow based on fixed rate because dia kata apa? Dia kata in the future market interest rate akan naik. Company B pula dia prefer to borrow at floating rate. Kenapa nak floating rate? Mungkin dia kata in the future the market interest rate will jatuh. So depend lah motivation, tak kisahlah motivation dia apa kan. Tapi mesti adalah keadaan macam ni. Right? Mesti ada satu fixed, satu floating. Right? Kalau dua-dua fixed ada dua floating tak jadi. Tak jadi so you have to have this. Now sekarang ni pergi pada bank, katakan pergi pada Maybank. Katakan Maybank kata, oh A you punya apa ni risk profile you tinggi because the financial track record not so good. So kalau you nak pinjam fix, I boleh bagi Maybank katalah I boleh bagi you 10%. Kalau you nak pinjam floating, I bagi you LIBOR plus 2%. Itu Maybank punya ni lah, terms pada A. Lepas tu B pula jemput bank sama. Atau tak kira lah, tak kira bank tak apa, kira bank lain pun sama, tak kisah. Tak kisahlah, bank lain pun sama juga. Pergi pada B, Maybank katakan, oh B you punya financial track record bagus. So kalau nak pinjam, I bagi you 8% fix, floating LIBOR plus 1%. Jadi bila B keluar saja, terjumpa dengan A. Tadi nampak you pergi jumpa Maybank ya? Ya, dia kata. Ni cerita sikit lah, nak tunjuk sikit. So, berapa dia charge you? A cakap lah, 10% floating, LIBOR plus 2%. Ya ke? I lain, I dapat 8%, LIBOR plus 1%. Plus floating. Jadi from here, bila dah jumpa tu, barulah you kata, katakan dia ada knowledge pasal arbitraging swap lah. Kena tahu lah pasal arbitraging swap, kalau tidak susah juga kan. So why not we do arbitraging? Because there is a mispricing by the bank pada kita dua orang ni. Kan in the perfect market sebab akan dapat rate yang sama kan. Tapi in perfect market because ada ni different rating ni, you kita tengok. Okay, so sekarang dah jumpa, dua parti dah jumpa, right? Kadang-kadang tak jumpa pun tak apa, kadang-kadang ada bank yang akan arrange arbitraging ni sebab ada banyak clients tapi katakan dia jumpa dua orang ni, tak ada middle party based on the different borrowing term offered by the market for both company A and B, determine whether there is opportunity to benefit from arbitraging activity for both companies. Assume that any benefit from the arbitraging should be split evenly between the two parties. Ini dia punya term lah soalan dia. So sekarang ni dah jumpa the two party, dia tahu dia punya ni, the terms charged by the bank, there is a misprice. Jadi kita akan tengok macam mana arbitraging will be conducted here. Now, dia ada step lah sini. First, kita kena establish what we call as the quality spread. And the quality spread differential, atau tak susah term ni, nampak grand tapi senang sebenarnya. What happen is just take the two here, yang ni, yang term ni, fixed dengan floating ni. Kita tengok apa difference fixed dengan ni, ada quality spread 2%. 2% ni makna quality spread for fixed. Quality spread for floating for the two parties will be LIBOR plus 2% minus LIBOR plus 1%, jadi tinggal 1%. Jadi bila yang ambil fix ni minus floating, dia ada 1%. 1% is called the quality spread differential. This quality spread differential must be positive. Barulah arbitraging tu boleh dibuat. Kalau dia zero atau negatif, there's no point buat arbitraging because you will not get any benefit. Important. Right? So ensure this is a positive from your question. Normally kita positif lah. Tapi in the real world, nanti bila dah kerja, bila buat di arbitraging, kalau you buat QSD dapat zero or negatif, tak payahlah waste of time. Right? Tak payah buat arbitraging. Here ada 1% and you will get benefit of 0.5% for each party. Because the QSD 1%, kalau kita kata you evenly split this into two kan, pada two companies. So each company based on this QSD will have a reduction of 0.5% interest rate. There is a saving of kalau 0.5% kalikan dengan 100 lah 0.5 0.005 kali 1 million akan saving of 750 million each year for each party. So normally exam question dia berlegar kat sini saja, very simple exam. Meaning sekarang ni because soalan kata company A would like to borrow on fixed rate basis, kalau dia follow fixed basis 10% sini. Jadi from the QSD kita tahu 1%, QSD split evenly jadi 0.5%, jadi tolaklah. Jadi at the end of the swap, this company A will actually pay only 9.5% of the interest obligation dia. Jadi dia kalau pinjaman bank tadi, A nak pinjam bank 10%. Jadi kalau based on the arbitraging tadi, dia akan dapat reducekan cost ni. Of course dengan bank dia still buy 10% lah. Tapi dia akan dapat untung from arbitraging which will reduce the overall cost of 10% dia by 0.5%. Dan ini 9.5% jadinya. For company B, dia memang nak borrow at floating rate. Company B borrow at LIBOR plus 1%. Through the arbitraging tadi, dia akan dapat 1%, 0.5% here. Jadi dia punya obligation seolah-olah dia akan bayar LIBOR plus 0.5% cheaper. Each party in fact dah buat saving 750,000 ringgit a year. A lot of money being saved through this. Right? Soalan exam dia akan buat step number 1, cukup dah selesai habis soalan exam. Tak susah. In fact kalau nak stop di sini dah habis lah kita syllabus dah. Sebab soalan exam terlampau senang, macam ni lah keadaannya. Ni boleh faham tak yang ni? Ni boleh? Semua boleh faham?
Boleh sir.
Soalan exam dia stop sampai sini. Tapi I nak prepare you to sit for your ACCA SIMA. So I nak extend sikit lagi lah. Sini sikit lagi. Ini just nak explain lagi lah. Ini explain lebih. So the quality spread is a premium paid by the borrower with a low credit rating over the rate paid by the borrower. So nampak sini kalau tengok note that in this example, company B with high credit rating has absolute. Company B ni, kalau tengok, company B bila, company B bila tengok, dia punya perbezaan dia, dia untung lah sini dia punya company B ni sebab dia punya risk profile dia bagus, dia memang nampak untung besar kat sini. Dia punya margin spread between the A and B ni 2%. Whereas A ni pula untung kat sini lah because dia punya spread is only 1%. Jadi B ni nampak kena besar, dia 2% beza. Jadi B ni memang banyak untung 2%, A ni dia memang untung 1% because spread is only 1% saja. Dia tak boleh claim yang 2% ni because 2% ni B much lower and this one dia boleh claim 1% yang cap je lah. So kita kata that is The quality spread is the premium paid by the borrower with a low credit rating over the rate paid by the borrower with a high credit rating. Jadi tadi mana 2%. Note that in this example, company B with high credit rating has absolute interest cost advantage in both the fixed and floating rate. Memanglah, memang dia dua untung lah, gap dia besar kan. For fixed 2%, for floating 1% different kan. However, company A has comparative advantage in the floating rate market because the floating spread dia only 1%. It's not as wide. Jadi untuk A dia untung sikit lah dia tak boleh the floating rate because gap tak besar sangat compared to the fixed rate punya rate. Okay, ni boleh baca lah yang lain. Nak tunjuk sekarang ni, kalau you masa buat ACCA nanti, dia akan extend sikit. Dia akan extend sikit dia punya understanding from there just now. Nak tunjuk, kalau boleh faham ni okay, tak boleh faham tak apa, don't worry. Right, because ni tak masuk exam, part ni tak masuk exam. Normally yang exam yang tadi atas je. Ni nak tunjuk you kalau you buat ACCA esok, boleh tak? Kalau faham ni, bolehlah buat ACCA dah. Based on step 1 tadi, each company borrows from the spot market where it has the comparative advantage. Jadi comparative advantage kena tahu because kita nak determine sekarang ni dalam spot market, sebab sekarang ni nak buat borrowing dengan Maybank tadi, belum tahu nak buat borrowing based on what basis kan tapi based on the comparative advantage tadi, kita cakap kalau company A ni nak borrow dengan bank dia, you should borrow based on LIBOR plus 2%. Kenapa? Because comparative advantage besar sini. B ni lah mana ni. Ni advantage ada B lebih banyak. Jadi kalau you nak buat borrowing the spot market, you borrow at fix. Mana tadi? Fix. Walaupun dia kata je nak borrow, B tu dia kata nak borrow at floating rate kan tapi tak apa. Tapi untuk swap purposes, dia kata you should borrow at this LIBOR plus 2%. B. B, sorry. I tersilap. Sorry, B memang boleh, dia memang nak borrow at fix kan. B prefer to borrow floating rate. Walaupun dia nak borrow floating rate, tapi dia punya comparative advantage besar the fix punya ni. Jadi for B, kalau dia nak buat borrowing dengan bank dia, it advise for him to actually based on fixed 8% sini. Ni spot market dia kena pinjam 8% lah dengan bank dia. Then kalau you talking about company A, because dia punya comparative advantage dia 1% sini, right? And therefore dia nak borrow based on fixed rate basis, tak apa, tak payah because you punya advantage is based on floating rate. Jadi bila you pinjam dengan bank you pinjam at floating rate, in this case LIBOR plus 2%, because bank akan charge dia LIBOR plus 2% floating rate here. Okay, so this is the position now. Because sama-sama nak buat arbitraging ni, ni bukan buat hedging ni, arbitraging lain so therefore, this is the position. Nak kena establish the position in spot market based on what kind of land borrowing that should be doing with your bank. Okay, so bila dah berlaku macam ni, barulah kita determine in the spot market macam mana. Kalau you bank A ni, kalau in the spot market dia macam cakap tadi, floating rate payer, bila dia masuk swap, dia akan minta jadi fixed rate payer. Bank B, bila dia fixed rate di sini, bila masuk swap tu dia akan minta jadi floating rate payer. The question now is, what are the rates to be paid under these two circumstances that will result in this benefit yang disepatut dapat ni. Okay, apa swap yang akan berlaku kat sini, what rate? Tadi tu macam soal yang example saya bagi tadi tu, I cakap, oh you kena negotiate lah apa semua lah kan Tapi kalau you dah ada situation ni, you boleh determine berapa rate, because you nak target sekarang ni masing-masing dapat yang ni. Right? Because dia punya QSD kata ini untung you. Bila you buat swap, that swap akan menghasilkan yang ni, end result dia. Tapi nak tahu dalam swap tu, berapa rate dia yang kita nak gunakan supaya dia menghasilkan tadi tu. So step number 3 now. Sekarang kita susun betul-betul. So determine the rate. Jadi sini katakan kita agree pay spot. Sekarang ni kita buat je lah. Katakan kita agree sebab sekarang ni kalau A tadi kita dah cakap tadi dia willing to pay spot dia LIBOR plus 2%. Betul? For B tadi pay spot dia 8%. Betul? Okay. Normally what happen is kita akan nampak ada tanda ni. Usually we settle. Kalau soalan ni you kena bubuh yang ni dulu. Lepas tu you kena bubuh yang ni pula. Dan you will cut in between here berapa. Tu tak tunjuk betul lah. Sebab yang ini kita boleh ambil dapat from here. Because at the end of the day, the result of the swap tu akan menghasilkan yang ini. Jadi kita tahu sekarang from the first diagram tadi, kita dah buat yang ni, kita just put here. Ini hasil dia. Dua tu mesti ada. And how to resolve the swap? Normally, kita akan resolve yang LIBOR dulu. Kalau exam keluar, ni isi exam lah, bukan kita exam. Kita akan resolve yang due to LIBOR dulu. Jadi company B kalau nak bernegotiate dengan ni, I minta you bayar I LIBOR plus 2% dulu, boleh tak? So what happen is, B akan bayar pada A LIBOR plus 2% and then A akan receive LIBOR plus 2%, jadi A punya business akan cancel out. Okay, nampak cancel out. Jadi yang tinggal lebih, yang tak tahu lagi X% kat sini. Siapa company A patut bayar berapa pada B based on X% ni. Jadi kita akan kira this equation sekarang ni. Maknanya negative LIBOR plus LIBOR minus X menghasilkan minus 9.5%. Okay, you resolvekan this equation. So kalau you resolve this equation akan nampak ni katakan ni, of course lah, ini mesti positif 9.5% lah. Pay for fine swap ini, soalnya this terbalik ni. This should be receive from swap. Receive from swap X%, pay for swap 9.5%. Macam tu, betul lah. So bila you resolve this equation, you akan dapat the answer should be 9.5%. 9.5% received here from A. Ini how to get this? Just resolve this equation lah. You akan dapat. Jadi bila kita tengok the whole picture of the swap punya ni will be something like this. This is spot position masing-masing, and this is the spot position. This is swap position. Fixed rate plus 9.5. 9.5%, pay for swap nampak sini 9.5%, A bayar pada B, and then B bayar pada ni LIBOR plus ni. LIBOR plus 2% gitu. So bila you tengok overall position ni, dia akan menghasilkan the CV yang kita predict atas tadi based on 9.5% for A and company B LIBOR plus 0.5%. Okay, so kalau you can understand this, then you boleh craft. Ini yang ACC ni skill nak apa? Nak you create a swap strategy. Ni soalan macam tu. So, create a swap strategy for the two parties, for arbitraging, that will result in profit for both parties. So you kena buatlah start number 1 tadi. Okay, kalau kita bachelor ni kita start sampai sini saja terus. Tapi kalau ACCA SIMA dia akan minta you buat ni. Okay, and then number 3 solve the ni and then show back apa dia punya structure dia macam ni. Okay, so I think you should understand this kalau you nak, tapi kalau tak faham tak perlu, tapi I hope you faham lah, itu yang nak sebenarnya. Jadi kalau next class I want to actually look kalau sekarang ni, kalau ada bank jadi middle party dia macam mana pula. Ya, maknanya bank sanggup jadi middle party, arrangekan arbitrage macam mana. So that is your homework now. To read this part here, sampailah habislah. Tak banyak lagi tu, beberapa few slide lagi. So we can finish all this by Thursday. Then I can start giving you by some past question. Okay, so a lot of things to ni, I think a lot of things to digest. Tapi kena slowly. Sebenarnya tak susah. Untuk exam purposes memang sangat tak susah. Tapi kalau nak a bit more advanced in terms of knowledge, try to understand the swap strategy I mentioned tadi. So that should help you understand better why swap is very powerful. You can actually create strategy to benefit you in terms of your interest rate obligation punya ni lah, reduction. Okay, any question nak tanya? Anybody? What do you think? Susah ke okey tak? Okey ke tak? Anis Syara, boleh follow ke so far?